We're good? Okay. You ready, Denise?
I'm good.
I'm going to introduce you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening for the third lecture in our distinguished lecture series in supply chain and business analytics. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Olga Horoho, who was our second speaker, for being here with us this evening. It's so nice of you to come back, Olga. Thank you. Our speaker tonight is Denise Allec, who's a vice president with NTT Data. Denise has extensive experience in supply chain, manufacturing, and a whole host of other disciplines. I don't want to steal her thunder. Denise and I met when we both worked together at Bristol Myers Squibb Company. Denise was the director. Much for being here.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. In addition to speaking, I have cash. I'm a big believer in motivation. So you had the food, or a little bit of food, and I ask a lot of questions. I'm going to come see you in the aisles and ask you questions. And Professor Jones is going to keep track of right answers. There's 3 prizes, cash. So whoever gets the most questions, hands-on experience, hands-on. And I don't care, they don't care, I don't care where you get it. You could start in the proverbial mailroom at a company, but through osmosis, through listening, through asking questions, through observing, you will learn so much about a company and an industry as long as you're there, observing, being part of it, and seeing what's happening and being part of the fabric of what's going on. So I cannot stress enough the importance of hands-on experience. I worked for Xerox out of college and Micom Black Box. I was a system analyst for them. Like I said, I studied management information systems, so I started supporting manufacturing for those companies, and I was tossed into the most interesting types of projects. We had something called engineering change orders, which changes the way a product is built if a bug is found or a defect. And believe it or not, it was taking Xerox months, once they knew of a defect, to process that engineering change order and get it out in the factory to be built correctly. And I know everyone's thinking, oh, but that was then. Today, with all this automation, we don't have that problem. In some cases, manufacturing's a little bit like Rip Van Winkle. And a lot has not changed. Yes, there are those Amazon warehouses and many fulfillment centers that are completely automated, almost, not completely. But for every one of those, I would say there's 1,000 manufacturing plants that haven't changed much in 30 or 40 years. You'd be amazed. And anytime you get the chance to walk one, take it. Or a hospital, or a retail warehouse. Walk it, observe it, see what's happening, ask questions. Then I moved to New York City and landed a job as a management consultant with Deloitte and had a ball, traveled the world, helping companies reduce their costs, increase their revenue, be more efficient. Many cases, it was about supply chain. I worked with manufacturing companies, and again, as you'll see, supply chain touches so many aspects of a company. After that, I joined Bristol Myers Squibb, which is where I met Professor Jones, and we ran corporate IT for Bristol Myers Squibb. We did a lot of, at that time, they called it thin client, but it was cloud applications. And our first year, we saved $250 million for Bristol Myers Squibb with those applications. It was amazing in procurement, supply chain, finance, HR. Then I was recruited to be CIO of Boehringer Ingelheim. I was on the board. They were a $5 billion pharmaceutical company. Then my daughter was born, and I left corporate America to raise her, so I started my own business along the way. Challenging, but learned a lot. And then I boomeranged back to New York and have an amazing job as Vice President of Industry Consulting for NTT Data, where I'm back to doing what I love, which is helping companies be successful. So that's a little bit about me. Some companies that I've worked for or with. All right. Anytime you see that question mark, think of it as a dollar sign. So, what is the definition of supply chain? And there's lots of definitions. If we ask everyone in here, we're going to get a different definition, maybe. If we ask 100 people, we'll get a different definition. But I want to know what you think the definition of supply chain is. Yeah, was that your hand? Uh-huh, no. This is how people win at auction by accident. Who can tell me definition of supply chain? All right, and you know what? I know I asked everyone their name, but I'm horrible. Tell me your name again.
My name's Chris.
All right, Chris, what's the definition of supply chain?
So I'll go with pretty much the process of going from an order, so demand, to fulfillment.
Demand to fulfillment. Thank you, Chris. Does anyone have a different definition? Anyone want to broaden the definition? Yes.
Zachary, I would say all of the ways from manufacturing to products on shelves, all the methods to get things from one place to another.
Okay. Anyone want to broaden it further? Thank you. Broaden it further. What comes before demand planning and manufacturing? How do we get products? And you can revise your answer. Where do products come from?
My name is Jamie. You would need to get the raw materials from other countries.
Excellent. Very excellent. How do you know what raw materials you need? Yes.
My name is Aiden. I guess you need to identify exactly what market interests are for the supply chain.
Close. Oh, okay. Think about it, you guys. How do you know what raw materials you need? What's in your mind? What are you making? What are you making? If I want to make that Levi t-shirt, someone came up with the idea for the Levi t-shirt. Who knows what those people are called? Innovators? All right. I think we'll give you the right answer. Product design. Product designers. You have no idea what raw materials you need, how to manufacture. You start with product design. Anyone think that stretches the definition of supply chain? Well, that's what some supply chains mean to some people. Where is my package? Port of Los Angeles, by the way, #1 busiest port in the US. Amazing. What is the definition of supply chain? It's the network of processes from product design to delivery to the customer. Pretty broad. Amazingly broad. Like, what else is there for a manufacturing company, right? Even in hospitals, even in a retail warehouse. It starts with designers. And tell me, how many designers do you think have walked a manufacturing plant? But the best ones have. So when you're pursuing that career, keep that in mind for me. All right. Oh, another question mark. How do companies measure the effectiveness of their supply chain? Doma has an idea.
So by how much revenue they make?
How much?
Revenue.
How much revenue? Good. How do you measure the effectiveness? Okay, by your revenue, you're absolutely right. But what if you have a bunch of unhappy customers? Lots of revenue. Is that effective? Yeah. How else? Anyone have ideas? Yes? Mr. Levi. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry, that's not your name. Here. but do state your name. Professor Jones.
Hi, my name is Kabir. One way I would measure the effectiveness would be the idea of how long it takes for the order to come, because a lot of customers get unhappy if it takes forever. So
Very good. Cycle time.
Yeah.
Cycle time. Who knows what cycle time is? Very important term. If you care about supply chain, please learn what cycle time is. No. You just won. No, I'm just kidding. Who else? Who else can tell me how to measure the effectiveness of supply chain? Chris. Chris is going for the top cap.
So I guess I would think that cycle time is, but through the time you create your inventory and the time you exhaust your inventory, pretty much every single time you loop that and you go through all your resources, I guess that constitutes one cycle. That's just my
Excellent.
idea.
Good. Yes, that is yes. That's a yes. Anyone else? Okay, and to help Professor Jones stay on his toes, just buy a little time and tell me your name again.
My name is Nick, and I was going to say, you look at historical data and make sure you don't under-manufacture or over-manufacture products.
Inventory levels. That's the top prize for this answer. But other people get to have tick marks too. Very good, Nick. Inventory turns, that's what you just described. What is an inventory turn? That's not a dollar sign, just FYI. But what'd you say, Nick?
I was saying, like, you look at historical data to make sure you don't make too many products or under-make products so you don't lose on sales or make too much and just waste money.
Very good. So inventory turns is how,
You manage manage the supply chain.
so that it's how many times a company turns their inventory in a year, which is amazing. And we have some stats. You guys, I think, will be flabbergasted. Customer order fulfillment rate, which someone said. You did. Thank you very much. And this one no one talked about. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Okay, sorry. The last one no one really talked about, but it's huge. The amount of scrap waste obsolescence. Pharmaceutical companies, do you think they have a problem with obsolescence? And if so, why? What makes a pharmaceutical, a drug, medicine obsolete?
If a new batch of the formula came out, they would have to get rid of the previous one because if the trials went wrong or something like that.
Okay, so let's say they made it. Yeah, go ahead.
If the drug expires,
Yes. But what makes it, what does obsolete mean? Did you raise your hand? No. What does obsolete mean?
obsolete means when it's redundant and it's not worth it anymore.
Okay, good. Yes, and in pharmaceuticals case, it's expired. It's past the expiration date. And in the pharmaceutical industry, if I ship a ton of Tylenol to distribution centers and it expires and they haven't sold it, they can return it to the pharmaceutical manufacturer and get their money back. Can you believe that? So pharmaceutical companies have it really bad and need a lot of supply chain help. All right, inventory turns. The number of times during a year a company sells or turns over their inventory. What's a good number? And what's the formula? Formula is cost of goods sold divided by the amount of inventory a company's carrying. So in the case of Pfizer, a pharmaceutical company, they hold an average of $1 billion, and they only turn their inventory 1 time a year. Do you know how expensive that is? Inventory has a whole bunch of hidden costs, which we're going to talk about in the next couple slides. Cisco, on the other hand, holds an average of $3 billion in inventory. Average annual cost of goods sold is $18 billion. Who can tell me what the inventory turns are? Yes, that was your hand. I'm going to make you answer it. Name, please, and answer.
Wilson,
Yes.
could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So the question is, so you see a formula up there, cost of goods sold, sorry, I lost the S, cost of goods sold divided by inventory level, okay? So Cisco has an average of $3 billion in inventory, and their cost of goods sold is $18 billion. What's their inventory turns?
The formula. The formula. I don't think I have an answer for this. Yeah.
That's okay.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Okay, hang on. I saw, unfortunately, yes.
It would be, Kabir, it would be 6, because you do 18 divided by 3, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Is 6 a good number? Do you think 6 is a good number of times to turn your inventory in a year? It is. It's not bad. The higher, the better. 1 is horrible. Okay? Pfizer needs a lot of help. Why the difference? I already explained one of the differences for the pharmaceutical company. Why does inventory turns matter? Who can tell me why it matters? And someone alluded to it earlier, which is Nick. So I bet Nick knows why it matters, yes?
Just so you don't under manufacture or over manufacture. You want to get at the right spot.
And what happens if you carry too much inventory?
If you carry too much inventory, you're spending too much money and you're not making it all back.
Very good. All right, is inventory supply chain? Yeah? No. Chris says no. Oh, ooh. Okay, let's find out why. Chris, why is an inventory supply chain?
Well, if inventory is a component of it, because there's really just a lot more that goes into it, because, I mean, obviously you have your management systems that manage your inventory, but you also have, like stuff that's in transit and stuff, and that you really can't consider as part of your inventory.
Oh, but you do.
Damn.
Procurement is a huge component of supply chain. Inventory, I'm just going to take a little tangent here. What are the 3 components of inventory? Someone mentioned one component earlier, which was very good. They talked about stuff coming in. What is that called? Someone mentioned it. Raw materials. What do you call inventory that's in the process of being built? Work in process. And what do you call it when it's finished? Finished goods. All 3 are hugely important. And if you analyze, which if any of you are working with supply chain, accounting, finance, IT systems, inventory, procurement, you will want to know what component of inventory is causing a problem. Are you running out of inventory in the production floor? If so, get a better handle on your raw material. Do you have too much or not enough in WIP? Figure out why. Do you not know what your production demand should be? And if you have too much finished goods, that's horrible, especially if it's sitting there idle. 3 components of inventory, all very important in that supply chain. All right, okay. Customer order fulfillment rate, someone mentioned that also. How to measure the effectiveness of your supply chain, good job. Measures the % of time a company completely ships a customer's orders on time, 100% accurate and when expected. So someone had mentioned revenue, and revenue is important, but if you have unhappy customers because they're getting the wrong product fast, we had an expression I can't use in public about how to get the wrong product fast. You can guess what it is. You can have the best systems in the world, but if you're producing the wrong product at the wrong time for the wrong customer, but you're making, you're shipping revenue, how long is that company going to be in business? Probably not as long as it should be. So it's not just revenue. It has to be accurate, it has to be on time, and it has to be full. It can't be back-ordered. So someone else mentioned this. Why not just have gobs of inventory so you always meet demand? Just make gobs. Just always have it there. What's the downside of that?
Well, if you have too much of something, well, my name is Jamie. If you have too much of something, like you said, it'll just sit there. So it's like you wasted money producing all of this inventory just like for it to sit there and not like, ship out to people who actually want it.
Absolutely, 100%. So people talk about just-in-time inventory, just-in-case inventory, just-to-guess inventory. Lots of ways of skinning that cat, but really being able to understand your customer needs and getting that right mix so you have the right inventory at the right time is an art. AI helps, and doing some tremendous things today with forecasting and demand planning, but being able to figure out when customer demand is changing and how to react quickly is also supply chain. That's supply chain, right? So many aspects. All right, there's lots of inventory, good thing. We have this great expression. Inventory is like high water level. The boat sits on top, never hits a rock. When that water level drops, when your inventory drops, like during COVID, what happened? What happened to companies during COVID? You want to try again? Yes. Name, please.
Hi, Wilson here.
What happened?
It goes out of business.
A lot of them went out of business. You're absolutely right. Why?
Why?
You know the answer. Well, based on that. What happened?
'Cause they run out of money or the inventory.
Well, they ran out of inventory. Why did they run out of inventory? Well, because as their inventory levels dropped, oops, all the problems that excess inventory hides started being recognized, and they couldn't address it in time. They couldn't fix it. How do you fix poor quality? You can't fix that in a dime. You can fix it, but not in the middle of a pandemic. Late deliveries, missed due dates, too much paperwork, too much scrap, too much inspection, machine downtime. All of those aspects, if you lower your inventory levels, suddenly every one of the problems you have as a company become very evident. However, to your point, carrying too much inventory is also a cost. So supply chain is a balance of all of those aspects. Quality, timing, costing, it's all distribution strategy. It's all very important, and it all ties together. You can't pick and choose just one or two disciplines or one or two types of jobs. So, is lots of inventory a good thing? Yes and no. On one hand, customer order fulfillment might be up because you have lots of inventory. On the other hand, it hides the problems. 75%, to your point, 75% of manufacturers during COVID had problems because they had too many issues being hidden by too much inventory. Just in time versus just in case. So there are also tremendous hidden costs in carrying too much inventory. I should have put a dollar sign there. Who can tell me? You already did. You get 1 point already. What are some of the hidden costs of carrying too much inventory? He's got it for some cash.
Kabir, I would say in terms of carrying too much idle inventories, like you would have to invest in like a particular storage facility, which can incur costs.
Does that cost money?
A lot.
Yeah. Everyone hear that? Storage. You have to pay for storage. What comes with storage? Handling, insurance, labor. What happens when you move inventory around? It gets damaged. What else?
The cost of goods sold increases as you are holding onto inventory, which makes you earn less profit as you're selling your excess inventory.
Very good. Is there a line item on anyone? Has anyone seen a line item on a P&L that says profit and loss statement that says inventory carrying costs? No. That's why it's hidden. But it's there. Nick has an answer.
I was gonna say, depending on the product, like food or medicine, that stuff can just expire. So it's just you're spending that money, but then eventually it goes to waste because you produce too much of it.
Absolutely. And for any of you that want to be a supply chain consultant, all you have to do is look at a company's inventory write-off. It's in the millions. In many cases, it's in the hundreds of millions. And all you have to do is say, I can help you reduce that, and my fee will be nowhere close to the savings I can get you by helping you reduce that. That's excellent, you guys. You guys, everyone gets mucho points, Professor Jones, on that. All right. This is what you just mentioned, write-offs. Inventory write-offs. That is a line item, actually, if you read an annual report really closely. Typically, it's buried in a paragraph. Again, a lot of accounting, a lot of finance teams don't get supply chain and hidden costs. So those of you that are studying finance, if you get it, you're going to be invaluable to your company. Because one of the little-known secrets is a lot of companies, when they need to reduce costs, what do they go after? When they need to reduce costs, what's the first thing they go after to reduce costs? Who can tell me? Yes.
Jamie here. I feel like they would lay off their employees.
Exactly. Did everyone hear that? They lay off employees. Is employees for a manufacturing company and for other companies the number one cost? No. Guess what is? Materials. But most people don't understand materials. They don't understand supply chain. They don't understand hidden costs of carrying inventory. They don't understand how to reduce obsolescence, scrap, rework. If you do, you're set. So, good job. Does carrying too much inventory have a cost? Okay, I think I jumped ahead. You guys already answered this question. What are some of the hidden costs? So you were great. Inventory carrying costs, by the way. If you carry $1 billion of inventory, you figure 10 to 30%, 100 million to 300 million. It costs you to carry that amount of inventory in warehousing and obsolescence and scrap and insurance, storage, all of that. That's a lot of money to go after. And that's so much better than cutting employees. All right, I think we've tackled this. Oh, one other thing with cost of money. And I believe you mentioned it, Nick, while you're busy investing all your cash in inventory, because that is cash in inventory, now you can't expand, you can't acquire, you can't do another capital project that you may want to do, because it's all tied up in inventory. It's listed as an asset, but is it? Not really. All right. All right, I think we've covered this too, but it made me happy because I like to kayak. All right. Rip from the headlines. What supply chain headlines? What horrible headlines are out there about supply chain? I'm going to go way back here to 3 people I have not heard from so far. And I know you have the TV on, you see headlines in the grocery store, Apple News comes across and shoves something your way. Who can tell me about a supply chain headline you've seen lately or during COVID? Yes, I see lips moving. Hang on. Tell me your name, please.
Chris.
Chris.
The supply chain headline.
It can be old.
I want to say the lack thereof truckers.
Excellent. The lack of truckers. That is excellent. Chris, good job. Wonderful. The lack of truckers. What else? What are some of the rip from the headlines today? You would have, if you were reading Apple News and not Instagram or Snapchat. What headline did you see? I see Nick's hands up. Oh, Doma. Okay, hang on. All right.
About the tariffs?
The what?
The tariffs?
Tariffs. Anyone heard about tariffs? Oh my goodness. Yes. How could you not? All right. Nick, did you have something different? You were going to say tariffs. All right. Any others? Lack of truckers. That's excellent. Tariffs. Now I seem really loud. Did I get like overly loud? No, I'm okay. Chris? Tariffs. Wait a minute.
There's also like worker strikes. Those you got to be wary of those as well, because if you don't have people manufacturing and transforming your goods, you don't have inventory, you don't have stuff to sell. So.
Very good. Very good. There was also this other problem potentially that's been in the headlines that supposedly threatened the U.S.'s supply chain. Involved a canal. Anyone remember that? Remember that? No? No one remember a canal? Yes, Doma. Doma's on fire with the headlines.
Panama.
Panama Canal. Everyone remember that? Anyone heard about the Panama Canal? I see some nodding heads. See, you could have been in the running for some cash. So, all right. Here we go. All right, so we did that. People got their points. You guys got them all. Oh, we forgot to talk about the last one, but we'll get there. Tariffs on imported goods, control over the Panama Canal, and, you mentioned it, manufacturing that's left the U.S. Everyone, those headlines look familiar? All right. Let's try to go through them. What's a tariff? How might tariffs impact the US supply chains? Is there a positive and negative? Does it really matter? Or is it just people making news? All right, these are facts, no opinions. Ken's like, Professor Jones is like, no way, Denise has an opinion on everything. According to Forbes, here's a tariff example. This was February Forbes. According to Forbes, before any of this tariff war happened, the US charges a 2.5% tariff if I order a BMW. And if Ken's living in London, Professor Jones is living in London, and he orders a Ford 150, the European Union is going to charge Ken 10% to bring that Ford into London. So they're going to charge me 2.5% to bring a BMW to Connecticut, and they're going to charge Professor Jones 10% of the value of the Ford 150 to ship it to London. That's an example of what the tariff argument is about today. How does that impact supply chain? Yeah? Cool.
My name's Isaiah, and someone has to pay the cost, so whether the manufacturer takes it or they pass it down to the customer, etc.
Excellent. Perfect. Very good. It's perfect. Someone has to pay. So everyone can have their opinion, but that's what the tariff argument's about. Is that fair? And we can argue until the cows come home, and every one of us can have a different opinion, but that's what the tariff argument is about. Is that fair? And who pays? To Isaiah's point. According to the World Trade Organization, and again, this is before the fight, the simple average tariff rates, this is all products across the board, not singling out beef, cattle, beef, milk, cars, whatever. The average amount the US charges other countries is 3.3%. Okay. And then there's a few examples of what other countries charge the US. Is that fair? Again, just the facts. People can decide. But that's what the tariff war is about. Should it be the same? Should there be any? Why do we have them? How does it affect supply chain? Which you've already answered. All right. I love this, Wall Street Journal. Professor Jones and I have healthy discussions about which periodical is more interesting. I vote for the Wall Street Journal. But what is the question's mine, not the Wall Street Journal's. What is the dollar amount difference between what we ship out to other countries or export versus what we purchase from other countries and import? What's the difference, dollar amount, between those two numbers? Who can tell me? Yes.
Aiden, I'm gonna guess here. Like a trillion? It's like 1 trillion.
1 trillion? Anyone have another guess?
I want to guess $3 trillion.
Okay. We have 3 trillion. Any others? Yes, Nick.
I'll go in the middle and say 2 trillion.
Good job. All right, we have a winner. 1.1 trillion. And again, a point for me, starting in manufacturing to date myself in the 80s, we were pretty much equal, what we imported and what we exported. In the 80s, when manufacturing was an amazing place to work. There's this expression that for one manufacturing job, it's responsible for creating 10. Why would that be? How could one manufacturing job in a community be responsible for creating 10 other jobs? Anyone have an idea? Anyone been in a community that's its nucleus is a huge manufacturing plant, and what's sprouted out around? Yes. Dollar question here.
Aiden, the distribution and other things to get from the manufacturing to customers just creates jobs in the area.
Distribution, that's close, kind of. Looking for a little more. Anyone have another idea? Yes, Chris.
I guess maybe to expand that, maybe the people that are transporting the goods. So like if you got a boat, you got to have somebody drive a boat. You got a plane, somebody's got to drive a plane. People who are loading that plane, you know, all those people that are involved in transporting goods, that's one job that could be there because of one thing you're manufacturing.
Okay. Anyone want to get broader on me? Yes? Yes. A hand. A new hand. Getting my exercise. How are we doing with time?
I would say that the one manufacturing company like creates innovation, and they need other manufacturing companies to help them.
Excellent. Okay, this man wins. Not only do they need other manufacturing companies to make the parts for your Levi t-shirt, guess what else that community that's now maybe has 1,000 people working in their plant, what do they need? Well, these are all families, potentially. Their kids need to go to school. They need a dentist. They need a gas station. They need a grocery store. They need all of the services that 1,000 people with families potentially need in a community. And so you hear about the plight of what happens to a community when a manufacturing plant closes. It's not just the manufacturing plant that loses their job. Suddenly there's no one to buy groceries. There's no one to eat out. There's no one who needs their teeth cleaned. There's no one who needs their kids taught. So the power of one manufacturing job is huge. I'm a huge proponent. So anyway, in the 80s were great. And then over time, as we started sending more jobs overseas, more manufacturing overseas, the trade imbalance got wider and wider. And that is another reason where the hope, at least that's the argument, where tariffs make things a little more equal to potentially restore the equity of what potentially existed in the 80s. All right, here's our Panama Canal. I forgot, who told me that? Who said Panama? Yes, good job. All right, opened in 1914. I didn't know this. Cut the shipping route in half from 16,000 miles where it had to go all the way around South America to 8,000. It's only 51 miles in length. $270 billion worth of goods moves through it every year. 70% of that is either to or from the U.S. That's why it's so important to the U.S. supply chain. 70% of that traffic is either our export or our import. And so the big brouhaha at the moment is because there are ports all along that canal. There's a port at each end as well, which obviously controls who gets to come in or who gets to leave. And at the moment, China happens to manage those ports. And so the concern, right or wrong, good or bad, is that, if they wanted to stick it to the United States, they could decide no more ships through that port. And so that's what the brouhaha over the Panama Canal is. So good job, guys. Ripped from the headlines. Oh, and in terms of manufacturing jobs overseas, this is something we learned during COVID, right? Where are medicines made? Not here anymore. Masks we were bringing in. Our defense equipment. I had the pleasure of being at this amazing shipbuilding location in Wisconsin. It's Italian-owned because we don't have a shipbuilder in the U.S. anymore. And the sad thing is, they can't build a U.S. ship because it's foreign-owned. And so the domino, it just keeps going. So there's a whole bunch of aspects to supply chain and all of the things that are making headlines these days. I'm going to come back and talk about sustainability and climate change in a little bit. All right. Oh, actually, I'm going to talk about it right now. This is a link when Professor Jones, or we make it available afterwards. There's a link to a documentary. Yes, it's a little long. It's 45 minutes. But the first 10 is the most interesting. So if you want to bail, that's fine after 10. But the Wall Street Journal, in the middle of COVID, did an amazing documentary on USB chargers assembled in Vietnam and how many miles it traveled, the parts that made it, and the finished good traveled to get to a US consumer. 14,000 miles from raw material to finished good, a little USB charger. And I don't know, if you're thinking about climate change, sustainability, that's a lot of miles for a little part, for a little tiny thing that costs $9.99. The impact on the environment, something to think about. All right, here we go. What types of jobs impact a company's supply chain? I don't think we have to go that far back, but there is definitely a shortage, and I have an opinion why. Who thinks, what might have contributed to people who understand supply chains during COVID that was obvious? When the inventory level fell, it also pointed out that a lot of people don't really understand supply chains. Yes?
I'm Zachary. One of the biggest issues during COVID, which was when all the supply chain things really kicked off into the mainstream, one of the main issues was the lack of truckers, and truckers being an issue. And so the lack of talent may be that people associate supply chain work with grunt work, with being a trucker.
Very good, very good. Yep, that was mentioned as well earlier, lack of truckers. Good answer. Not quite the one I'm looking for. Yes.
Well, I know certain areas were put on lockdown, which means that maybe imports weren't able to come in since U.S. was on lockdown.
Okay, good. Why do you think we struggled? I'm going to ask the two supply chain girls in the back. Hang on. Why do you think we struggled during COVID with supply chains? You know that chart I put up showing the disparity between the 80s and the 2015s or 2010s? What was different? What happened? Why do you think we struggled?
Amelia Carson, and they're both right with the truckers and the manufacturing lockdown and the holdups at the ports. It was important, but the supply chain relies so much on imports and exports, and if a community is on lockdown, the whole world went on lockdown. So without those, the supply chain kind of froze.
Okay. That's a good answer. Still not quite what I'm looking for. What do you think happened? In the 80s, there was a lot of manufacturing. Obviously. And as those jobs went elsewhere, and then we were faced with a huge supply chain crisis 40 years later, 50 years later. Anyone think there were people around that still understood how to handle a supply chain? What do you think?
Hi, Jenna.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the 80s, those people they're still alive.
But did they have to pivot and go do something else?
No. Yeah. They did. They did have to go do something else.
They did. Sorry. Okay, we're going to let Denise gets that answer. Yeah, our talent's gone, guys. Yes, there's pockets, but if those jobs aren't here, people had to pivot and find another career. What does that mean for you guys? Endless opportunity, in my book. Endless opportunity. Because if you get it, you can go anywhere. Any big company, small company, it's valuable here, it's valuable overseas, it's valuable anywhere. If you understand supply chain. What types of jobs? Product design. That's where it all starts. Product design. Marketing. What does marketing have to do with supply chain? Who can tell me? How does marketing impact supply chain? Okay, do we have a leaderboard here, Professor Jones? I'm thinking we do. I'm seeing a couple.
Well, with marketing, it's the idea of your company being in the public sphere. If your company's not in the public sphere and being noticed, it won't attract any, attention to any idea of possibility of sales or any idea of customer attention. So.
Okay, tell me about sales.
The idea with sales is the idea it contributes to like revenue, how much you're earning and how much you're selling, right? So if you don't have marketing, it ties into sales. So if you don't have marketing, then you're just losing opportunity to get any attraction or any like, how do you say, broadcast to your company.
Forecast, that's the word I needed. Thank you very much. Forecast, marketing, forecast. How do you know what to make? Forecast. Professor Jones, how's our leaderboard looking? Could you please, I can't read your hand right.
It's Kabari, right? Barry has 5, and it's a 8 million, 5-way tie for second.
Ooh, between who?
Christian, Nick, Jamie, Aiden, and Toma.
Okay, guys, we have 3 prizes, so you may want to step it up. Step up your brain. All right. You told us why marketing is important. Forecasting. How about sales? Why is sales important to supply chain? How does sales impact a company's supply chain? These are easy, guys. These are like easy points. We should probably have graded them.
Well, I was going to connect sales and forecasting together. For example, if people demand more, for example, in the summer or the winter or a certain month, you got to account for that and produce more during those time areas.
Good. Very good. Forecasting. Is it important for sales and marketing to talk to each other? Do you think they do today in most companies? Not really. You'd be amazed. Again, if you're good, there's so much you can do and so much impact you can have. Demand forecasting takes the output of marketing and sales and figures out how much to make and when, which in turn drives sourcing, right? If suddenly Europe is keen on those Levi t-shirts and the US is like, yeah, I like Dockers, then source closer to home. You may want to change your sourcing closer to the EU instead of the United States. Procurement. What does procurement do? What's procurement do? Yeah.
So I guess that's what you said earlier about acquiring inventory, procuring your goods and everything like that. And again, making sure that you don't spend too much in this process, because if you have too much of the inventory, then it gets tied up and you don't have liquidity with your cash. I think that's an important consideration at this stage of the cycle.
Good. Perfect. That's procurement. Materials. I have an example in the next couple pages. Materials are the folks who receive inventory, keep it accurate, get it to the lines in time to make the product on time, handle it well, store it well, so that when the customer wants something out of finished goods warehouse, they can quickly put their fingers on it when they need it. Very important. Production, it's evident. They make the product. Logistics and shipping, who can describe that USB charger? So it leaves the Vietnam manufacturing plant. How does it get to you in Seton Hall University? What steps does it have to go to? Yes. Isaiah has an answer.
It would end up in a port, like the boat goes from Vietnam to a port in the U.S. Then from there, it would get sorted and go to a distribution center. How? It could be through trucking.
Perfect.
Then it goes to like a delivery driver or a smaller distribution, more specific distribution center, and then it goes to you.
And how does it get there?
Trucking usually.
Back to our truckers.
And then from there, like a delivery driver. So, I mean, that is a smaller trucker, but you're still driving something.
Isaiah, do you work in an Amazon order fulfillment warehouse?
I avoid Amazon at all costs.
Good job. From that warehouse to the consumer's last mile delivery, very eclectic, entrepreneurial part of the equation. Anyway, and at the end is happy customer. Lots of jobs that could impact supply chain. And for those of you who are like, they don't pay much. Well, I don't know. This is average across the US. This isn't East Coast salaries. So you may want to add a factor of 50% to those numbers. Not bad. Not bad at all. And that's not all of them. That was just a chart I found. Because product designer's not up there. Manufacturing engineer's not up there. There's a lot of ones missing. Truckers aren't up there. And they make pretty good pay. So, Lots of different jobs affect supply chain. All right, let's tie it all together. This is a real-world example that was my first project when I landed in New York. It's all true. So we were hired as a consulting firm because of, how am I doing on time, Professor Jones? I'm good? Okay, good. All right. They were very unhappy. Their material costs were going up. They had high inventory levels, but they still couldn't meet customer demand. It was changing too quickly. They couldn't keep up. They couldn't react in time. So like, help, this isn't working well. Can you help and see what's wrong? And of course, they all had their own opinions. They had shipped all the manufacturing from the US to the Philippines. They thought, well, all we had to do is lower our labor costs, that'll solve our problems. Nope, because the majority of their costs were in materials, not labor. So sending it to the Philippines didn't really solve their problem. And then when suddenly I wanted Dockers instead of Levi's, it took them months to respond to that change in customer demand. So let me walk you through a few of those reasons. Our approach. So headquarters was in Connecticut. We interviewed all those people, all of which, every one of those affected the supply chain, every one of them. Then we went over to the Philippines, Manila, a few other manufacturing facilities, and we talked to the people in the material receiving room. We talked to the people on the manufacturing line. We talked to the shipping people. What's going on? What's happening? What's the problem? And we also spoke to suppliers. Many of them were Asian-based. They met us in Hong Kong. We had interpreters. And we asked them, what's it like working with this company? How could they get better? How could they improve? What did we find? It could take 3 to 8 months to respond to a change in demand. That is not fast fashion. That's not fast retailing. But it's also not incredibly unusual even today. Maybe it's been cut in half with systems, AI, automation, better data, global data, the cloud. But if you have silos and you have people that don't talk to each other, the best system in the world is not going to help that. So what was wrong? Product design took an average of 22 months from the time someone thought up an idea for a new watch until the time it actually was made. That's horrible. The supplier's ability to react could take 4 months, 3 months, 4 months. 75% of that time spent was wasted. Bobby Sue not wanting to talk to David, people not wanting to talk to each other, having to put it in a special format, systems that didn't talk to each other, whatever it may be. Just a bunch of meetings. You had to have a meeting to approve a forecast before you could pass it along. The forecasting process involving marketing and sales who didn't speak to each other very well because they each had to approve their forecast before they could pass it along and before it could get consolidated globally could take almost 3 months. So you're already behind the 8 ball before you've gotten very far. And remember I pointed out the importance of the material person? Receiving the materials and issuing the materials sometimes took longer than how long it took to assemble the watch. So a lot to work on. But the number one reason for their inability to respond quickly, the product designer didn't use standard parts. They used custom parts for every watch they designed. Are you kidding? So if you had a change in demand, instead of just going off the shelf and pulling a standard part, the vendor had to make custom parts to respond. It was that easy, and no one ever asked. It had been years. Also, suppliers have a certain amount of fixed capacity, right, in their plant. The watch company didn't say, hey, I want 50% of your capacity. I'm going to buy that from you. And you're like, okay, cool. And then whatever I ask you to do, you'll do. You don't have to negotiate every time you have a change. They weren't doing that. So we instituted that. We fixed the fact that marketing didn't talk to sales. And we found there was a lot of duplication of effort, people reinventing the wheel, no one trusting anyone else with the information. And inventory was only 80% accurate. So as someone mentioned, when they went to buy something or pull something or make something, they ran out of inventory a lot, and you had idle production lines. All right. Which of those findings had the biggest impact, once fixed, on being able to meet customer demand quicker? Which one? Yes.
Aiden and the off-the-shelf custom parts, probably.
Absolutely.
Because of the fact that you have to have the whole supply chain do it for you again.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Good job. Wonderful. Did anyone disagree? Anyone want to have a question about that? Make sense? All right. All right. Good job. That was the answer. All right. What business decisions impact a company's supply chain? I think we went through some of that. Product design, better forecasting, using better tools. We could spend hours talking about the systems, which I think Olga did spend some time, right, talking about systems. I purposely didn't. There's so many amazing ways that systems can help, but if fundamentally you don't have the right processes in place, the system is only going to make the wrong process faster, not necessarily going to make it better. So you always got to go back and make sure the process is working. People are talking to each other. Procurement's negotiating and sourcing vendors in the right place. Materials management. Most manufacturing companies, 90%, have inaccurate inventory levels. They have no idea what they have. And they sure don't know what they have globally. It's amazing. Reducing scrap, we talked about that. We didn't even get to the warehousing and distribution center strategy. Where should we store our inventory? Where are our customers? A lot of companies forget to do that. So they're adding to that 14,000-mile journey because they don't know that most people who want that Levi t-shirt lives right here in New Jersey. No idea. But anyway, so optimal, happy customers, on-time order fulfillment, which we spoke about, having the right level of inventory at the right time for the right customer. That's the Fincantieri ship, by the way, which is so cool. It's how they christen a ship. Ooh. Ooh. All right, Christian, Nick, and Aiden, I need you up here, please. All right, oh my gosh. All right, just one question? All right, have a seat, please. Oh, you can stand. No, that's okay. You can, no, please stand. Yeah, that's very cool. All right, let's think here. All right. Where was I when Professor Jones and I worked together? What company? What? Okay, there we go. That's close enough.
Bristol Merrill Squibb.
Very good. All right, we got our winner. We have third place?
That's second place.
No, okay, so you got second place. All right, now it's between the two of you for third place. And then we'll have the prize ceremony. Okay. What's that? Aw, that's so nice. Is the prize an internship? I can work on that. All right, let me think here. Wow. Yes, tell me, help me. Oh, excellent.
What is the current tariff from the United States to China, and what is it for big tech products? The overall and the big tech.
Okay.
Nick? 13%. How about for big tech products? Computers and things like that? 135? I'm pretty sure the answer is 145 and 0. They just stopped the big tech over the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think Christian won.
Well, okay, well, you know what? As MC, I feel bad that it was on something that wasn't in the presentation. As I said, as MC, I take offense or under advisement from the judges over there that it was not material that was in the presentation.
Well, that's true. But
right? And Joyce agrees. Jean, okay. This is why we get along so well. All right, but along those lines, Professor Jones, thank you. That was very good. Along those lines, what is the average tariff the U.S. charges other countries? Today, before the tariff wars. The World Trade Organization had that statistic.
I think it was like 13.4. I don't remember. I was remembering the numbers.
I remember 17 was up there on the board at one point.
Okay, well, it's 3.3, so, but you were closest, so the point goes.
Do I get the internship?
That I will work on. All right, winners, do come up, and we get cash prizes. Oh, but before we do that, does anyone have any questions for me? Anyone have any questions? He's questioning why he didn't win. Oh, no, you did win, right? What's that?
Yeah, did I win?
Yes. Anyone have any questions for me? He just wanted to know his winning status. No? All right. All right, guys. You get to come up on the stage. Does anyone play the piano, Professor Jones? Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun. Come on, guys. All right. So, in good fashion, the winner of the third prize is... No way. Is Chris. Here's $25 cash. Congratulations. You were hoping for more or less?
No, this is amazing. This is my gas money. This is awesome. Yeah, this is the best. Yeah.
Good.
This is like
Congratulations.
Christmas. This is
Oh,
awesome.
okay, good. Congratulations.
Thank
And you connect with me, and oh yes. If you connect with me, that's our chicken spice. Then you can talk to me. Okay. All right. You're welcome. All right. Runner-up, or second place, is who, Professor Jones? Who? Eden. Aiden, congratulations, $50 cash. Yes. What do you have to say?
Thank you very much for Ken Jones for organizing this event. A very good event, and also thank you for presenting.
You're welcome. But more importantly, why are you here?
I was here because he's my advisor, and and my mom is here as well.
All righty, and the number one cash prize of $100 goes to, dun da da da. Full name, please.
Kabir. Yeah.
Kabir.
Cool.
Tell us again.
Kabir Ansari.
Excellent. $100.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you
Good
very
job.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All righty. All right, guys, look me up. Please do something with supply chain and help the United States. Thank you.